Yeah, yeah, you can go here, or wherever you want. And I'll take some photos.
Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Which one?
We have a very special night for you. We're going to have a Q&A with the star himself, Jose Feliciano. And we also have a very special night. We have Gary Hamilton from Associated Press going to conduct the Q&A on our behalf, and we'll have with us Frank Licari and Khoa Lee. If you could come up, that's great. And Jose, if you feel like it, come on down. Thank you. Just while we're waiting to get set up here, there are a few people in the audience. There are a lot of people in the audience I really have to thank. First of all, we have a lot of the people that were in the film in the audience. And you'll see Johnny Feliciano bringing down Jose, drummer extraordinaire, show off per... Oh, no, sorry, that's Mikey Feliciano. That was a show off on bass. I'm sorry. We have Melissa Erickson Feliciano in the house. We have Susan Feliciano in the house. And without Susan, this film wouldn't have got done. So, a big round of applause for Susan. Thank you very much. You're going to hear more about Fan Club President in the future, but for tonight, we'll leave it at that. Quite an extraordinary career. We have Jack Sommer in the house. Yeah, Jack calling Jose a freak. Jose will talk about that a little later. We have the wonderful editor of this film. Give it up for Paul Jaga. We also have Alex Villamorino. Hard for me for all these special last names on photography. We have a lot of people in here that did a lot of things. It takes hundreds of people to make a film like this. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's fine. That was a wonderful film, wasn't it? You guys can do better than that. That was a wonderful film, wasn't it? Yeah. A wonderful documentary for such a wonderful and legendary person. Jose, I guess I'll just start off with you. How did you feel when you were approached about, a documentary being made about you?
Well, I was flabbergasted, but by the same token, I did want to tell my story, because if this documentary can help anyone, I used to think if it helps people who are blind like myself, that'll be a great thing. But I hope that it helps anyone who needs help in any way.
Well, it was definitely inspiring learning about your story. I guess I'll start with you, Helen. Can you talk about the framework of this documentary? How did it all come together?
Well, Jose asked me to do his documentary, and I said, I can't do it. And Jose said, yes, you can. And he believed in me and Frank and Khoa. And we're not straight from Central Casting, given the names Murphy, Licari, and Lee. But he said he'd teach me Spanish. And, well, Jose, how have I done?
You've done very well.
He fibs. But anyhow, one of the reasons Jose wanted to do his documentary at that time, he shared with me, was he wanted to do it with his friends while they were alive. And I have to dedicate this night to Rick Gerard, who was a very significant player in this film, who's with us above and who passed. And, Jose, like always, he sees far ahead of all of us. And I'm just really happy that he asked us to do it when he did. Jose?
Well, I am just as happy as you, dear. And, let's hope for more places for the documentary to be seen.
Thank you, Jose.
You know, as an entertainment journalist, I talk to celebrities all the time. Not always celebrities as legendary as him, but, you know, I guess, Jose, one thing that I always wonder about, you know, people who've accomplished great things is that when did you realize, you know, you were special?
Well, I have to say, Frank, I never thought of myself as special. I just knew that music has been my life. A lot of times I'll be in one of these electric cars, and Jay Stolman will come on the air and talk about different people's birthdays. And I'm so happy that Light My Fire was a success. One, because I happened to really like the Doors at that time, and I still like them at that time. It wasn't Jim Morrison really who was at fault for starting a cult, but that was what he was really good for, to bring us to that point.
Great. And one thing you'll find about Jose, if you didn't pick it up in the documentary, is he's very humble and bashful, and he is a genius on the guitar. He's a genius, his voice, and he will never admit it. He's gifted, and he's truly, you know, our American legend. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
And I think that's also one of the reasons we needed this documentary, so we can see his genius at work. You know, Helen, Frank, and Khoa, I'll address this to all of you. You know, and I know, Helen, you've known him for a while, but, you know, is there anything that surprised you, or something that you learned while making this documentary?
Yeah, I come at it from a different perspective with Jose. He and I got the opportunity to tour with Jose in 2012. And when I first saw him live, I was talking to somebody about this early in this evening. When you first see him perform live, you've heard the songs. I grew up with Chico and the Man and all the stuff. But when I first saw him, I was in the Canary Islands, if you remember. That was our first show.
Yep.
And we were playing they were playing with this orchestra, and I just saw him play. And I was so blown away by just the rawness of what was coming out of that guitar. And then he started to sing, and it was, you know, you're in this hall, and there's nothing. There's just him and his guitar, and you're hearing this voice, and there's no affectation, and there's no... what I found was it was just so authentic. And after knowing him now, we've known each other for 11 years now, the authenticity of this man is what I admire the most. Yes, all the accolades that you hear us talk about and display in the film, all of the awards, but the authenticity of who he is. He's the same guy, whether you see him sitting here or you see him on the stage in front of... I played with him in South Korea with 10,000 screaming South Koreans, phonetically singing his music, by the way. Just not knowing all the words, but knowing everything. And he's that same guy. We were a mile from the border, I think, at the time when North Korea was, a little shaky. They still are. But just seeing him then is the same guy you have here. And that's, to me, what was the most compelling thing about him, is that you get what you get, and he's not apologetic about it. And I think when we meet celebrities, right, there's the persona that we know, and then you get to meet them, and you're like, oh, never mind. Right? This guy he's who he is. He's lovely. It's a privilege to sit beside him. It's a privilege to have made this movie. It's a privilege to call him a friend.
Well, you are my friend.
I
11 years.
I appreciate it. And that's all I could say. It's just his authenticity, more than anything else.
And what about you, Khoa?
For me, it was a history lesson. I mean, I didn't know much about Jose Feliciano at all. And, working with Frank and Helen, and I come from a totally different perspective of starting from the ground up on doing my first documentary with the team. And it's more of like the technical side, the production side. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing working with Jose, and then it becomes this kind of gets, as you grow into it, you get starstruck while you're making the movie. And so I had to give it to Helen and Frank for really putting all this. The production was insane.
Wow. Jose.
What's the best thing on a woman?
What?
A man.
Just a personal. Is everybody aware of Jose's sense of humor? Okay, all right. Just so you know, while you're doing this, you're also getting a second show in your ear of just jokes. So that's one of the things. I got to travel with him on the planes, and the amount of jokes I've heard is incredible. So I love this guy. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, of course. Jose, with all the accolades, the Grammys, the fame, the fans, the documentary, does anything surprise you at this point about how you're honored and how fans and loved ones feel about you?
Well, let me tell you, everything surprises me because, as I said in the documentary, I didn't expect so much for people to make such a fuss over me. All I wanted to do was just play my guitar, sing my song, and as Elvis said, I just keep singing my song.
Wow.
Well, I have to tell you, that's Jose the humble man. But as a CEO of Anthem Records, you got to get back in the studio on Monday, Jose. And he's got to work. And for all of you that haven't been following him lately, he's incredible. He did a duet with Dolly Parton earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
Hey, I had to do something with Dolly Parton.
Stop it. Stop it. Okay, we're going to cut it off here. The song, I believe, is Dolly's favorite song, Eagle When She Flies. It's an incredible duet. So if you get a chance, listen to it. He did a song with C. Tangana last year, one of the top rappers in Spain, and it's Grammy nominated. He's just completed an album called Love and Christmas, so you know what that's going to be about. Look out for that. It's big. And if he thinks he's getting a break after the documentary, he can think again. Sorry, Jose.
Well, what's next, Helen?
What's next? There we go. This guy just doesn't stop, from Sammy Davis to Frank Sinatra. You saw it all in the documentary. He's incredible, and he never stops.
Wow.
And as you know, I'm a big Frank Sinatra man because if there are a lot of Sinatra fans here, listen to that voice that he had. When he played with Tommy Dorsey, he followed Tommy's breathing, and that helped him. And listening to him about his pitch situation and all, it helped me, because I have perfect pitch.
He does.
Obviously, when you're making a documentary, and I'll address this to the filmmakers, there are hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. So I'm wondering, was there anything left on the cutting room floor that you really wish you could have included, but just due to time's sake, you guys weren't able to?
Well,
I don't know, because I didn't see it.
Well, I'm going to take the first stab and then turn it over to Frank and Khoa. Kind of a painful journey, Jose, 55-year career full of hits, the ups and downs. I've never seen ups and downs. I've been in the business 30 years that Jose's had for a whole variety of reasons, some of which are outlined in the doc. So you got 55 years, 92 minutes. That's 1.6 minutes per year. It doesn't do enough. There was an incredible number of musical sequences we had to leave on the cutting room floor, but the one that was most painful for me, which Susan bridged the gap, is Lonely Teardrops. And I would encourage anybody after this to go on the internet and watch Jose follow Michael Jackson's moonwalk and blow it out of the water in Lonely Teardrops. And the reason the footage didn't make it into the film is because there's still that same crazy kind of political situations with certain people. They wanted creative control. They didn't want the story told about his Motown days. And you know what? And I credit my fellow filmmakers. We were going to tell the truth, and we were going to tell the whole truth, and it's in there. And this man has been a victim of discrimination for many, many years, but he just moved forward every single time. And, you know, that for me was the most painful thing. But you know what? Susan bridged the gap. You saw it there. You can go look at it. And if you listen to Lonely Teardrops, Susan said she thought he was black in the first place. You know, earlier in the film, when you listen to Lonely Teardrops and then you listen to what he said to Dick Clark, and then he kind of joked again about it.
You know, I want every black person who sees this documentary, I want them to feel like, hey, you know, we have a friend here, somebody who loves our music. 'Cause like in school, most of my friends were black, and they would be the ones to take me to their house, and we'd have baked ham and sweet potatoes. I mean, you know, it was an experience that taught me more than I ever expected to learn in life. And so I'm happy about this documentary. I love it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
What about you guys? Was there anything that you felt should have been included that you guys had to leave off?
You know, for me, I want to give credit to Paul. Paul is our editor up there. You stand up, Paul, real quick. He was pretty much full time for a year and a half editing this project for an hour and a half full time. You know, 40 hours, 50 hours a week, and so he would know all the footage that was left out.
Yeah, there were so many. Again, Paul knows because we talk all the time about what I feel for him and the work that he did. The amount of time that I mean, I don't know how many late nights we had, Paul, together, and how many phone calls and how many. It was incredible to go through this. But you know, when you see a career this with the breadth of Jose, there's always going to be stuff that you can't include, right? And as a storyteller, you have to find those arcs and you have to find those things that bring the story along. But you know, gosh, half of his hits aren't in this movie, right? There's just so much you can do, especially as an indie filmmaker too. There's obviously constraints that we have in that regard.
And
so
I think we have like maybe over 100 different versions.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my filmmakers really like to use every single hit song until they realized we had to license them. And at that point, let me tell you, one of the hardest things to do for this film, we fought for over a year to get the rights to use In My Life by the Beatles for this documentary. And John Lennon has said the only version of In My Life that he likes better than his own was Jose's. And yet that's a problem, because then when you go to license the track from the person that originally did it, they're kind of mad that Jose did it better. Anyhow, it took a year. We waited, and we got it. And it's a testament to Jose and his musical legacy that the Doors and the Beatles and the Mamas and the Papas, and I really hated them for about 9 months, because for 9 months my family endured. After dinner, I'd go down to the office from 9 to 2 in the morning and work on the licensing. And the licensing. There are over 17 original hits in this documentary, and it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for all of us to get them. So I hope you do appreciate the music.
Yeah, I do.
You can't have a Jose documentary without Jose's music. That's just simple.
It wouldn't have worked without the music. You know, Jose, we saw your childhood and learned a lot about your younger years in the documentary. And I'm just wondering, you know, was there somebody special or, you know, special people who, you know, told you or made you feel like you weren't any different than anybody else? Or did you go through childhood thinking you were different?
Susan taught me that. She taught me that I was different, And I don't know. I had evil plans with Susan. I did. And then I did a stop, and I thought to myself, Jose, you know, she's not just some ordinary girl that you can have your way with her and toss her out. I wouldn't do that, and not with her. And so because I'm glad when you find somebody that's as pure of heart as Susan has been, you'd be a fool to take off and leave. So.
Suze.
And just to be clear, this documentary wouldn't have happened without Susan. Thank you, Susan.
Well, just a couple of more questions before we open it up to the audience. But I guess I will ask, the filmmakers. It's interesting when we learn about, for those of us who didn't know about the controversy of the anthem. And I like the juxtaposition of how you included that history along with what's going on now in present day, whether it's, Colin Kaepernick or civil rights issues. Can you guys just talk about why you chose to include or link present day with what Jose went through?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hot button topic, right? And it's such a part of the fabric of our country, especially these days. And, the thought of that, well, two things about it strike me as crazy, right? That an artist being creative was looked upon as negative, right? An artist being creative was something as universally owned by all of us as the national anthem was crazy. The fact that they saw him as an immigrant is also insane. I think we can all agree with that. And so I think this country's always had that sort of, well, the ownership of the anthem is a certain way. We don't need to discuss it, right? It's still current today, and I think I think we can all agree that it's something that unfortunately we think gets better with time, but we're still dealing with the same things we were dealing back then. And you can't tell that story without telling the current story, because in my opinion, and in our opinion as filmmakers, it's the same story going round and round, and it has to be told, and it has to be hammered home, and it has to be brought to the light so that we can finally, at some point break that, that mold that we've gotten ourselves into. So it was important to bring that and put that together.
Yeah, I would just add to that, how funny life is. 50 years later, he's asked back by the Detroit Tigers to celebrate the World Series. The truth takes a long time to unfold, but to miss that moment, to not capture that, it also, the goal of what Jose wanted to share about his documentary is that, you can do it. You can try. You can go. You can be true to yourself. He stayed true to herself. Susan collected over 400 newspaper clippings of horrible headlines about how awful Jose was because he had long hair, glasses, and a dog. Now, it's 2022. Would we describe Jose long hair, glasses, and a dog? Yeah. Okay, but we know what it means. Back then, he was ridiculed as, a disrespectful person. And, putting Colin Kaepernick in there and putting those controversies in there, put it in the perspective of time and history. When we look 50 years later, what will we think about the headlines today? And that, for filmmakers, is very important on the truth. I am so happy that Jose's truth has been told. And whether it's Jimi Hendrix, whether it's Carlos Santana, whether it's Gloria Estefan, they all tell the truth of Jose's journey, which has been, as Frank has said, an authentic journey. And sometimes we don't want to hear those stories, but his story needs to be told.
Well said.
All right.
Jose, you've accomplished so much in your life. I'm wondering, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of my family. I'm proud to have a family because I didn't think I would ever have any because my parents kept telling me that because of a hernia that I had as a kid, I wasn't able to have children. I wouldn't be able to. So, boy, did I fix their wagon.
And it's beautiful to see that Jose's entire family is here tonight, and we're a big part of the documentary. So that's a beautiful testament to you as a human being, Jose.
Well, lastly, before we, you guys can applaud to that, definitely. Well, lastly, before we open it up to the audience for questions, one last question, Jose. You know, I want to make sure I ask this, appropriately. I know in the film you said that, at points in your life, you were mad, that you were blind. And so you've gone on to have such enormous success, a legendary career. If God were to come down right now and say, Jose, you can have sight, however, you won't be able to have your legendary musical career, what would you choose?
I would choose the gift he gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
I love that. Short and simple. All right, I guess we can open it up to the audience for questions now. And I think we'll have a microphone that will go around.
I used to have an engineer by the name of Mike Me Close.
Okay.
I think stand up is next for you. That's going to be your next
Oh,
act.
it is. It is.
Jose, do you still own the rights to Feliz Navidad? And if you do, would you sell it to me?
No, that song will never be for sale.
Well said.
So many hits and so much music, it seemed like that was the major part of your life. What do you do as a hobby, like in your spare time when you're outside of music?
Music is the only life I know. I have no hobbies.
You like to drink.
Yeah, but I learned that from you. Hey.
Okay, Murphy.
They always say you always need to give a man and his woman their roses while they're living. And this documentary is giving your roses while you're living, Mr. Feliciano. You and your wife sat down with me back at BB King's about 7 years ago, and we did an interview. And we were supposed to do 30 minutes. You gave me almost 2 hours. And I've interviewed over 750 musicians. I'm still doing what I'm doing. And I came out of here to say thank you for allowing me to sit down with you and also reconnect with my Detroit roots, because I told you about Ernie Harwell and what he meant when I was working in broadcast radio back in Detroit, but many years ago. And hearing Ernie's voice, long gone. When the station I worked for went to All Sports Talk, I was like, wow, this man is the reason why your success is where you are 50-something years later. So I want to say thank you for giving me that time. Keep doing what you're doing. And I want to add one more thing to the Motown legacy. You know that you're part of DeBarge's legacy. All this love, that solo. Do you know that you're being played on just about every urban radio station in the United States, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Chicago, whether it's LA, New Orleans. That song is a classic, and you've probably helped conceive a lot of kids with that solo and Elle's voice.
Well, I'm glad. I like the song myself. I did.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Jose, first of all, I want to say congratulations. My question to you is based on the song Quesara. basket, right? I know you perform in Festival San Remo, and you were a runner-up against, the Barry. And my question to you is, based on that song became so famous, you think that you should have won that on Festival San Remo?
Where he played the clavinet. It's an instrument that is like a harpsichord, but it's electric.
Yeah, and Jose believes that he should have been number one. And numero uno.
Numero uno.
Okay, how's my Italian now?
Your Italian is great.
Thank you.
The lady in the back.
Hi, my name's Maria, and Jose, I'm such a fan. I'm like so excited, I can't contain myself. I'm one of those Cuban political exiles in Miami in the 60s and the 70s. And when that happened with the Star Spangled Banner, I remember we were horrified because we as Cuban people and Spanish people, you were our voice. You were the people that we saw. And I remember being so upset because I loved the song, the way you'd sang it. And I remember my mother saying, oh, these Americans, they don't have any culture. They don't know anything. And we were just so proud that you made us that proud. So it's just, and I love your music. Feliz Navidad. What can we say? Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Was she one of the ones that was falling on you?
She might have been, I don't know.
Thank you for this beautiful film, Jose. Congratulations. And you always say that you never forgot your roots, so I'm going to talk in Spanish. Gracias, José Feliciano, por nunca olvidar Puerto Rico, tu patria. ¡Que viva Puerto Rico! Y José,
Muchas gracias.
José, sé que te gustan mucho las bromas. Y esto es serio. En mi casa encendemos el fuego con Light My Fire.
All right.
Here, I'll help out. We have a gentleman right here who's been waiting to ask something.
Y tú sabes creo que la hija de Cobo Santa Rosa hace unas patitas. Patitas de cerdo con arroz blanco y garbanzo, Dios mío.
And then you.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
What?
Jose, it was really good to hear your guitar playing through the great sound system here. It was great to hear Carlos Santana, a guitarist, give you such, appropriate kudos. So I have a two-part question. Musically, who didn't really get into your influences that, as guitarists, you talked about Frank Sinatra and some singers, but as a guitarist, as other, guitarists growing up, when you were a kid, and then after, even since, the last 50 years, some of the guys are, anybody that's turned your head since, maybe.
Well, I think this Irish fellow that Mark Allen played for me, I think he's a fabulous guitarist, and there's other guitar players. I'm not the only one, and I don't want to be the only one.
Mark, who's the Irish guitar player that you played for him?
Adios míos. I don't know. But were there any as a kid that made you say, "Oh, gee, I got to do that. I can, or I can do that"?
Yeah.
Yeah, just yeah.
George Benson. Benson, yeah, sure.
George Benson, definitely. I like George Benson. And I never met Tommy LaPuma, the producer, but I thank him for playing my instrumental for him.
You were on Bill Withers' Justments record, and we lost Bill. He was one of the first of the musicians that died during COVID. Give me your reflections on Bill, because he was such a wordsmith, and his talent was just so very raw that his storytelling and his songs, there's no one that ever going to replicate his talent.
Well, my favorite song of his was Use Me. And I liked it because Denise
Nichols.
Ortharber sang it, and she did such a great job, you know. And I always liked listening to Donny Hathaway going over and over again. I try to tell myself that we could never be more than friends. And at the time, I could feel it was real, the way you make me feel.
Jose, I collect addresses of famous people who grew up in New York City, and I was wondering if you could tell us what your address was in Harlem.
Well, I do remember. My address on Henry Street in Harlem was 190 Henry Street. And Gouverneur Hospital was right across the way.
Yes. Mr. Feliciano, hi, my name is Edgar Jaramillo. My wife was with me.
What is your name?
Edgar Jaramillo.
Okay.
My wife and I are friends with your brother who passed away. My condolences, Ishmael, del Pastor from the Bronx. You know, we know his daughter, Inez.
Yeah.
You know, Inez. So, Mr. Feliciano, yes, I wanted to ask you, I'm a singer myself, an artist, musical artist, and I wanted to ask you regarding your times when you were doing your career, and you had times when there was politicized situations, discrimination, and as a musical artist, as an artist, you're going to be sensitive to these things. What got you through those times when you could have given up, or you could have had hate, or you could have felt the weight of all these things on top of you?
Well, hate is what killed Martin Luther King.
Wow.
And I've never wanted any part of hatred. I think it's the most evil thing in our world, and we have to get past it. We have to stop feeling envy when somebody else does something better than you could. That's just the way life is. You know, some people run faster, some people play better, or whatever it is. There are people who have their gifts. Thank you.
Saludos, José. Ya que estamos hablando de Puerto Rico, de comida criolla y todo, tenía que preguntarle cuál es su sabor de helado de Lares favorito.
El helado de Lares que más me gusta es el arroz y habichuela.
Lo sabía. Muy excelente. Gracias.
I think we have time for just a couple of more questions.
Hi, Jose. My name is Paul. It was a pleasure to work on the film as I edited, and there was so much to go through. And basically, I'm from Puerto Rico descent as well, and it was a nice little inspiration. You know, Feliz Navidad, obviously, we all have heard of that. And shout out from my mom, Maria, rest in peace, blah, blah, blah. And I just wanted to ask, what was your favorite segment / time period of the film, or I guess just your life in general, or something we didn't cover perhaps maybe?
Well, the reason you didn't cover everything is because there is so much. And poor Helen had a tough enough time to get some stories and some semblance of my life to put on a documentary. So I loved it all. Some of it made me cry, especially when Martin Luther King was shot. That made me cry. I couldn't help it. And in my house and in my garden, I have a statue of Martin Luther.
And we couldn't cover everything in the doc, and that was left on the cutting room floor, Jose, so it's for the next documentary.
Could you clarify the album controversy at Motown where Berry Gordy failed to release your album because he had made an album with you, which he's admitted was not good?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Were both albums eventually released?
they kiboshed it. Yeah. He blocked the album because he wasn't a part of it, right? So just out of sheer pride. Correct. Yeah. He didn't want it to compete with what he had done, and he kiboshed
Would
it.
have made money for him because Lonely Teardrops
Yeah.
was as good by me. Yeah, it was a smash, you know.
He done another album with you, which he pushed that harder
Mhm.
than the album
Yeah.
that
Yeah, and it just wasn't done as well, and he couldn't bear it, and so there you go, ego and craziness. Yeah.
I think there was a hand in the back for the last question, unless, yeah, there we go.
Hi, my name is Fiona. My dad loves you, Jose. He was born in 1952 and has been playing you all of the time.
I'm sorry, babe, I can't hear you.
You cannot hear me, or you can now.
Now you can, yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. My dad, I pretty much grew up hearing you around my house. My dad played you all the time. He grew up with you. He saw Jimmy. He's seen Janice. He's seen everyone. And I think you're probably one of his favorites, other than Jimmy, of course. Sorry. But basically, my question for you is, how do you think young musicians can produce music that still combines aspects of classical instruments with like modern genres?
Well, I think, let's face it, the Beatles could do no wrong. They were unusual in their time because they were musicians. Real musicians, definitely. I'm sorry to say that there was some product that I didn't like of Dick Clark's, and that was Fabian. Fabian was not my favorite. He was a good-looking guy, granted, but he didn't make me feel like a tiger. You know.
And I think, you know, if the question is, are we going to get back to a period where we have real musicians and not produced product?
I think so. I hope so. I don't mean to answer for you, Helen, please. But I just think that the full circle will come back.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Here.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can have one more question, and then we have a little thing to wrap up.
Sure.
That's okay? Oh, I think we'll take this lady here. We'll come back to you.
No, that's all right.
Okay. I'll come back to you. I'll come back. Thank you.
Hi, Jose. My name is Carmen, and I am a humongous fan of yours. But more so, I have 3 children, one of which is a super duper fan, and he wish he would have been.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Are you married or are you happy?
Both, actually. So unfortunately, I was a single mother. I divorced my ex-husband. My kids were very young. But because of you and your music, my 4-year-old, who was very devastated, did not know how to speak Spanish, but he sang your songs. And
Wow.
because of you, he was able to overcome the divorce. And I want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep, that's great. Really.
Thank you. Okay, last question up here, and then we've got something special we need to do to wrap.
As it was mentioned in the documentary, you said after your 13th album was when you decided to make a Spanish album. What inspired you? What motivated you to finally make an album in your native language? By the way, my favorite song is Me ha echado el olvido.
Well, I missed going into the studio with my friend Rudy Perez. And Rudy and I we are past friends. We are brothers. I love him. And Rudy can write like you cannot believe. And I'm hoping that Rudy and I can come out with a new album called Escenas de Amor Part 2.
Beautiful. Beautiful. There's no such thing as a free great documentary, so we have one big thing to do before we leave tonight, and you all are going to be part of something very, very special. Jose, Susan told me it was your birthday, like I didn't know. So it's a real test, it's real tough. You got to sing happy birthday to Jose Feliciano, and he has perfect pitch, so don't screw it up.
Yeah, right.
No, we'll just do the regular version. Okay, now, Jose, are you going to start it? I don't think so. It's your birthday, but
Let us start it for you.
okay. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jose. Happy birthday to you. And before we wrap up, there's one more thank you I have to give. It was a dream of all of ours to have a New York theatrical premiere. Jose's career, as you know, started at Gertie's, not too far from here, and I want to give a special thanks to Scott Feinstein, who made it happen. Scott? Scott was the first person, and we have a little gift for you, Scott, just so that you just don't ever forget about your contribution. Scott was the first person I let know we were doing a documentary on Jose, and I sent him the first cut, and he sent me a 3-page email telling me how much he loved the documentary, and he has been with us for over 4 years, working hard for us to make sure Jose's story got told. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.